Warning, this video contains strong language that may be offensive to some viewers. Please be advised. Otherwise, please enjoy. A whole week has gone by since Junho woke up in this reality. This is the 8th morning he is commuting to work by bus. Junho is thinking about how far he has come since he began working as a dungeon cleaner. In the last 7 days, he cleaned 25 dungeons, gone through 6 bottles of disinfectants, and dismantled more than 30 monsters. And, just how many skills has he unlocked? 1. The Hyper Boost skill. Junho doesn't know which is more absurd, having unlocked just the one skill, or having unlocked the skill, because he just showed up to work. He is thinking, sure, Hyper Boost is a great skill because it significantly increases the person's speed. However, it is nothing special if there is no attack skill to pair it with. Moreover, the skill has no business in cleaning because it can only be activated during battles. Junho sighs in disappointment but then accepts it. He guesses that it's better than nothing. And then, there are the requirements for unlocking his other skills. To unlock Fallen Angel, average salary of dungeon cleaners must exceed 60 million won, about $45,000. To unlock Limit Breaker, job competition ratio of dungeon cleaners must exceed 30 to 1. To unlock Omnipotence, dungeon cleaning must become the most preferred career choice among young adults. To unlock Yearbook, conversion rate for dungeon cleaners to full-time must exceed 50%. Junho thinks that achieving any of these requirements is impossible. Everyone knows dungeon cleaning is the most extreme and unappealing job in the industry. He sighs out of frustration. He begins to think about the other requirements that appear to be relatively easy. However, they are a little abstract because they don't provide specific targets or numbers. The requirement to unlock one counter is interest from the association leaders on the cleaning team, and for Hellfire, increase budget for the cleaning team. Nonetheless, he is thinking that the requirement for one counter is the most feasible, interest from the association leaders. He is thinking, with his knowledge and experience as a former SSS ranking hunter, he could gain their attention by giving them tips and advice for the next 10 years to come. Sure, they probably won't believe him at first. Junho wonders if maybe he should reach out to his former teammates and gain their trust. He then rejects the idea, thinking, not a chance, of the million hunters out there, no one is going to believe him. Junho is feeling dismal. At this rate, he will be stuck as a dungeon cleaner forever. Junho gazes out the window and is lost in thought. The stranger, who has been sleeping on Junho's shoulder, wakes up and jolts, when Junho suddenly bursts. The other passengers on the bus tell him to keep it down. He is angry because he missed his stop. Junho has arrived at the job site. He is shocked when he sees half the team has shown up. He asks if the others are just late. Sang-hyuk tells him that not everyone is like him, and that the boss went to get more disinfectants. Soyeon says Heejong is taking some time off for personal reasons. Junho tells them that they're 10 minutes behind schedule, and asks if Guntae had to go now. Sang-hyuk tells him to speak for himself because he is the one who is 10 minutes late. Junho tells him it's because he missed his stop. Sang-hyuk smiles at Junho, and he tells Junho that he got him some coffee and to drink it while he waits. Junho is noticing how his attitude towards him has completely changed since they first met. He is guessing that Sang-hyuk is surprised that he hasn't quit this job yet. Junho is eager to begin working. He asks what's the delay, and says that they should get a head start. Sang-hyuk tells him that they are not done yet. Junho asks him with what. Sang-hyuk tells him, the conquest, that the hunters are still on it. Junho is a little annoyed. He stands in front of the dungeon entrance and notices that it is one he doesn't recognize. He looks at the color of the portal and sees that it can only be an intermediate blue-level dungeon, at most. He wonders what is taking them so long because it can't be that challenging. He joins the others and sits on the ground, and he says, "How pathetic." Soyeon is confused by his judgmental remark. Junho begins to accept that the situation is different because it's not like he can assist the hunters in the dungeon. Nevertheless, he expects them to finish soon. However, that was a big miscalculation. 30 minutes later, Junwoo has completely run out of patience. He begins shouting, "What the hell are those idiots doing in there? If I were in there, I'd." Soyeon interrupts him, and says that she sees them. One by one, the hunters come out of the dungeon. One person comes out coughing, and one comes out staggering while carrying another. Junwoo is watching them in judgment. He clicks his tongue and says that they're a bunch of amateurs, for them to come out as a mess just from a blue-level dungeon. He remarks, "What a waste of their salary." Soyeon quickly interrupts him and tells him to keep his voice down. And then, Junwoo sees someone coming out of the dungeon that he knows. He recognizes the long silky hair and the pale and smooth skin. Her name is Minju Kim, and she was a junior hunter on his team. Junwoo blurts out, "What is she doing here?" and Minju Kim hears him. She approaches him and asks him if he has something he wants to say to her. Junwoo is feeling anxious. He replies to her, "No, miss." He is thinking, why her, of all people? Earlier, he had considered reaching out to his former teammates from his past life. However, she is an exception. He is thinking about how she despised him for no reason. He remembers how she went off on him, because he once suggested she retire after she was severely injured. He was only trying to be considerate, but her nasty pride was all she had. Although, he admits that she had potential as a hunter. Soyeon approaches Junwoo and says his name. She asks him if he knows that hunter by any chance, because she noticed he was staring blankly at her. Junwoo tells her no, and says he doesn't know her, she just looked like someone he knows. Soyeon says she understands, and she tells him that he was frowning quite intensely, so she thought she was his ex. Junwoo is flabbergasted. He exclaims, "What a load of nonsense." Soyeon apologizes and tells him that she was just kidding, and in that moment, Guntae has arrived. Guntae notices Junwoo is tense, and he asks what is wrong and if something happened. Junwoo replies, "Nothing." Sang-hyuk interjects, and says that it was indeed nothing, just this fool seeing his ex. Junwoo yells at him to keep his mouth shut. He then tells them to cut the crap and that they get working. The blue-level building dungeon. Literally an entire building turned into a dungeon. The team are inside, and they ask Junwoo if he has also done some research on it. Junwoo tells them, no, not really, and that the only thing he knows is that the boss is a humanoid monster. Junwoo is thinking about how for the past week, they've been bombarding him with questions about the dungeons and monsters. Because he's not familiar with this one, he's given them some bullshit response, and they seem to have bought it. The team begins cleaning. Guntae reminds everyone that byproducts in a building dungeon are difficult to see, and he tells them to make sure they search from corner to corner. He tells them to also make sure they check for pools of blood at the bottom of every staircase, and he tells Junwoo to come with him to the boss's room. When they arrive in the boss's room, Guntae is appalled when he sees the boss monster, and he says this is why he doesn't like humanoids, because the boss monster looks exactly like a human corpse. The boss monster is a Vega, a humanoid monster that looks like a female human and is only a little over 5 feet tall. Guntae crouches over to look at the monster. Junwoo tells him that he doesn't think they need to dismantle it. Guntae agrees, and it doesn't feel right to him anyway. Guntae notices Junwoo is being quiet, and he asks him if something is wrong. Junwoo is staring at the monster corpse, and he tells him that it is nothing. However, Junwoo is seeing that something is off. He remembers that the Vega is not a particularly threatening monster, but it is very agile. As long as you can dodge its quick attacks, it is a done deal. Junwoo wonders, but why? Why did Minju Kim struggle against such a weak opponent? In his past life, Minju Kim was a B-rank hunter at around this time. And, it may not sound like a big deal, B-rankers are quite powerful. If not for her injury, she had the potential of becoming an S-ranker. He remembers how Minju Kim was swift in using her sword. Although stubborn, she still was highly skilled. She's not one to struggle against a blue-level boss. Guntae suddenly calls out to Junwoo. He asks him if he is just going to stand there all day, and if he is expecting him to carry the monster all on his own. Juno realizes he's just standing there, as he sees Guntae is by himself struggling. He tells him that he had just zoned out. He walks over to help Guntae, and he is thinking that none of it matters anymore anyway. She's a stranger to him now. Juno is looking at the Vega's arm when something about it suddenly catches his attention. Guntae exclaims, "Oh goodness, my back." Juno is concerned with the slash cuts. He wonders, Minju Kim, she can't be. It is 5 a.m., and Juno has been yawning non-stop. He had only 2 hours of sleep, and it's been 3 consecutive days of bad luck. He is thinking about how he has never been this busy, not even in his 100 days. Sang-hyuk wants to know why they don't just call them when they're done. How long are they going to take? Guntae tells him that they won't know until the hunters are finished, so they should be used to this by now. Sang-hyuk calls them inconsiderate fools. Juno empathizes with him, because they have already been waiting for an hour. Soyeon tells Juno that he looks exhausted. Juno tells her he is a little and asks her how she is doing. Soyeon is exhausted, she has heavy bags under her eyes, and she appears to be delirious. She musters up a smile and tells Juno that she is doing alright. Juno sees her face and is thinking, doesn't look like it. He tells her to take it easy, and moments later, they see the hunters coming out of the dungeon. The hunters appear to be exhausted as well, but Sang-hyuk lets them know that they kept them waiting for 1 whole hour. Juno is annoyed and questions why, out of a million hunters in dungeons, why does he keep bumping into her? Minju Kim is outside the dungeon, and she stops when she sees Juno. They look at each other and they both step aside towards the same direction at the same time, blocking each other's path, and they step towards the other direction at the same time, again, blocking each other's path. They are now both a little annoyed. This time, Juno stands still, and Minju Kim walks around him. Juno curses at her when he hears her say, "Why the heck is he getting in my way?" Juno is watching her walk away, when he notices Minju is squeezing her right shoulder. He thinks of the Vega monster from the dungeon they cleaned the other day. The slashes in the Vega's arm showed signs of a problem that Minju Kim is going to face in the future. He wonders if he should say something to her, and then sighs, thinking that there is no point, and he is still not over what she said to him. He begins to recall his memories of the last time they spoke to each other. Juno has arrived at the hospital, where Minju Kim is a patient. Minju says, "You came," when she sees him. Juno asks her how she is feeling, while thinking, no proper greeting to your superior? She tells him that it hasn't been long since the surgery, so she isn't sure. Juno is already feeling annoyed. He clicks his tongue at her, and asks how a hunter like herself could neglect her own body like that. He then lectures her about how he has told her to strengthen her left grip, and that her overestimating her own abilities is what led to her injury. He then mentions that she should have gotten some rest too. Minju replies, "Well, you could have told me sooner." Juno says to her, "Excuse me, I don't like that tone I'm hearing." He then sighs, and tells her that he is not saying this out of spite, but because he cares. He then pulls out a letter and tells her that she won't last long as a hunter with her injury. He drops the letter on her lap and tells her she should retire. Minju is shocked. She asks him what he means. Juno tells her that everyone in the association agrees. Minju stares down at the letter as she tries to maintain her composure. Juno begins telling her to not strain herself before she injures herself even more. Minju interrupts him and says that this isn't right. She tells him that she can do just fine and that it's not a big deal. Minju is shaken and is feeling emotional. She tells him that he knows why she needs to stay a hunter, and Juno cuts her off. He tells her that it is nonsense and that she will only drag the whole team down. He tells her that the decision has been made and to just follow his orders. He then tells her that she should have spoken up if she was in pain, but instead, she only made matters worse. Minju glares at him. She asks, "Speak up?" Juno answers her, "Yes," and he calls her a fool and tells her that he isn't that inconsiderate. Minju interrupts him and begins shouting at him. She tells him that she definitely spoke up, and she told him about her pain multiple times, and that she told him that she needed to go get checked. She recalls what he said to her, "You think you're the only one in pain?" Tears begin to flow, as Minju continues. She tells him that she had to suck it up and hide her injuries because of him, and now he is telling her to quit. Junwoo jumps in her face and begins shouting at her. "Bullshit, don't put the blame on me. Am I the one who fucked your shoulder up? You should be looking after yourself, not me. What kind of dumbass neglects her injuries just because she is told to?" Minju brushes him off and says it is whatever, and she is still capable. She tells him that with rehabilitation, she will recover, and Junwoo cuts her off. He asks her who is going to cover for her while she is gone. He asks her what she can do with that useless shoulder because she is a swordsman. He then mentions to her that if she insists, she can join the cleaning team. Minju asks him if he ever considered her as a partner. Junwoo is thrown off by her question. He asks her, "What?" He wonders what kind of nonsense she is asking. Minju apologizes to him and says that it was a stupid question. She then smirks and tells him that she was probably disposable to him anyway. Junwoo does not take her sarcasm lightly. He asks her if she now doesn't give a damn. He tells her that the truth is, he never enjoyed her company and that she never took his orders seriously. He asks her if she now thinks she can be a smartass. Minju tells him that he is right, she never liked him as her boss. He never cared, and he always just scorned down on them. The way he is looking at her right now is the look he gave them every time. Dumbass, parasite, cleaning team, she tells him she doesn't care what he calls her anymore. And then, Minju slaps Junwoo hard on the face. She tells him that she really hopes he will become a better person in his next life.
"You son of a bitch."
Junwoo remembers that was the last thing she said to him. He guesses that he did say some hurtful things. He wonders if she really tried to tell him about her injury. He honestly doesn't remember ever hearing about it. He is thinking that he probably told her to suck it up without giving it much thought. It's too late now, but she would have become a great hunter if it wasn't for the injury. However, he didn't think her condition would develop this early on. Junwoo is feeling a little annoyed. The situation is really getting to his conscience. He turns around and calls out to her. Minju wonders if he is talking to her. Junwoo stutters as he tries to tell her, "Strengthen her left grip." Minju is weirded out and confused. Junwoo begins to speak clearly. He tells her that relying on her right hand when she holds the sword is putting a heavy strain on her shoulder. Even though this current posture helps her attack faster, it will quickly wear out her shoulder. He tells her that she needs to use her left hand as support to help alleviate the pressure. She just needs to remember to use both hands to disperse the pressure. Minju says to him, "Oh. Sure." Junwoo sees the blank expression on her face and thinks, "Great, now she's thinking, what kind of nonsense is that cleaner babbling about?" He shouts, "Whatever, who am I to talk?" and he turns around and begins stomping his way towards the dungeon. He tells her to go get a checkup or whatever, it's none of his business. Minju watches him leave and wonders what all of that was about. The next day, Minju visits the hospital. The doctor tells her that she is lucky. Minju replies, "Pardon?" The doctor shows her the MRI scan and tells her that there is inflammation in her right shoulder. He says it's not too serious, but it can lead to a serious injury if left untreated. He tells her he will prescribe her some medication, but she will need to improve her posture. Minju asks the doctor what exactly he means. The doctor explains to her that her overall balance seems to be off right now, and she would need to strengthen her left grip. Minju is in shock and thinks about what Junwoo told her. The creepy cleaner said the exact same thing. Later that day, somewhere in the city, the cleaning team is completely exhausted. Junwoo wants someone to kill him now. Guntae commends everyone for doing a great job. Out of nowhere, Sanghyuk criticizes Junwoo that it's not the way to do it. Junwoo is confused and he asks him what he's talking about. Sang-hyuk tells Junwoo that he can't keep his ex waiting on him like that, and he points to Minju Kim. She has been waiting, and Junwoo is wondering what she is doing here. Hyuk tells Junwoo that he can't keep his ex waiting on him like that. Junwoo is appalled. He wonders what Minju is doing here at this hour. However, his team thinks the situation is funny. They say she is his ex and that they should give them some space. Guntae tells everyone that he will see them tomorrow. Sang-hyuk tells Junwoo that it must be really nice to have someone waiting for them. After they leave, Minju walks up to Junwoo. Junwoo asks her what she wants, and he tells her he is exhausted and that he needs to catch the last bus home. Suddenly, she swings her sword and holds it to his neck. She asks him how he knew, and who he is. Junwoo is feeling agitated. How dare she put a knife to my throat? Minju asks Junwoo what is with the silence, and she demands him to answer her. Junwoo asks her about what? She says, my shoulder, and she tells him not to pretend like he doesn't know what she is talking about. Junwoo now sees what this is about. He guesses that she actually went and got it checked. He tells her that it was just a wild guess, and that he wanted to pull a prank on a hunter with stuff he read online. Minju questions him, online? She tells him that her sword skills are confidential, that they are not known to the public. She also mentions how he even seemed to know about her posture and the muscles she used. Junwoo is realizing that he made a mistake, because all the points she stated are true. He is beginning to regret getting himself involved. He knows that Minju's swordsmanship is exceptional, and information about it is not something that a dungeon cleaner could get his hands on. Junwoo is concerned that, if the association hears about this, they might think he is a spy. He decides to just be straight with her. Junwoo tells her that he saw the sword marks on the carcass. She asks, the sword marks? He tells her yes, and that there were plenty, but some stood out more than others. He explains that the cuts made by the vertical slashes supported by her right arm were deep, and that the other subsequent cuts were significantly shallow, and that is how he knew her left-hand grip was weak. Junwoo goes on to explain that Vega is a boss monster whose only strength is its agility. It is otherwise not a great threat. Counterattacking the Vega's quick attacks is a well-known strategy, and yet, he couldn't find any signs of such attempt on the carcass. There is no way for someone like her to not be aware of the strategy. So, he figured she wasn't in a condition to catch up to the Vega's speed. Minju is taken aback by Junwoo's analysis. She realizes everything Junwoo mentioned is true. She lowers her sword, and she tells him that she did feel momentary pressure on her shoulder. Junwoo tells her that she probably didn't think much of the symptoms before, but, as a swordsman, she must have felt that something was off during battles. Junwoo is thinking that, even though he is not a swordsman, he is able to relate and provide advice, because he was an all-class hunter, the first and only. Minju tells Junwoo she knew it. And suddenly, she grabs his shoulder and looks at him with eyes full of admiration, and she asks him if he is a freelance hunter. Junwoo is astounded, and he tells her she is speaking absolute nonsense. Minju cuts him off and she tells him that she has heard that there are several in the city, and that there are A-rank freelance hunters, hidden masters with acclaimed skills who appear only in highly difficult dungeon conquests. She then asks him if he is a high-ranked hunter from the civilian guild instead. Junwoo asks her what she is talking about, and he says he is no hunter. Minju is shocked. She asks him what he is then. He asks, "Can't you tell?" "I'm a cleaner." Junwoo tells her that should answer her question, and that he needs to get going now. As he walks away, he is thinking that it is obvious what she wants. She probably planned on profiting off him if he turned out to be a high-ranking hunter. However, he is just a pathetic dungeon cleaner at this moment. He no longer wants to have any business with her, and suddenly, he hears, "Thank you." Junwoo quickly turns around to look at her. He is completely surprised and taken aback. Did she really just thank me? The Minju Kim, thanking me? Minju is feeling bashful about something she wants to ask of him. She says to him, By the way, if you don't mind. The next day, Minju is at the association office to meet with her superior. Her superior asks her if she is really requesting a vacation, because she is asking out of the blue. Minju affirms, and she tells him that the support team also thinks she needs some time to rest. He asks her if it is because of her recent medical evaluation. She answers yes. He thinks that it is silly, a vacation for some shoulder pain? Her superior's name is Soo-young Lee, and he is the head of Strategy and Operation Team 1. Apparently, he is only 5 years older than Minju Kim, and he pulled some strings to get his position last month. He tells her that a vacation for such a reason would be unthinkable back in his day. Minju tells him it could also be an opportunity for some personal growth. Soo-young Lee doesn't believe her and says that it's more like a vacation with her boyfriend. She tells him that it's nothing like that. He asks her what it is then. She tells him that she would like to improve her swordsmanship. Soo-young Lee is very confused. He asks, "And, take classes where?" She tells him no, and that she would be learning from a personal tutor. He questions her, "A tutor?" He asks her if she has gotten herself a martial arts master, or if she is referring to her boyfriend. With a sigh, she looks away and answers him. She says, "From a cleaner." He says, "What?" She clarifies herself and says, "A cleaner on the dungeon cleaning team." He asks her what the hell she is talking about. He questions her if she is really going to learn swordsmanship from a cleaner, and her, an actual hunter. He tells her that he would rather have her take kendo classes. He then says to her, "Don't tell me it's the cleaner who told you to get your shoulder checked up." Minju is surprised that he found out. She wonders if it could have been the support team. She then remembers she had a conversation with one of the nurses at the hospital. The nurse asked her if something was up because she has been visiting frequently. Minju is not happy with the nurse sharing her business. Soo-young Lee tells Minju that the cleaner is acting outside of his own league, and he asks her what a hunter could possibly learn from a cleaner. Minju tells him that it's not a done deal, yet. Soo-young Lee doesn't understand. She tells him that she had asked the cleaner last time but he rejected her. Soo-young Lee is now irritated, and he begins yelling at her. He asks her if she is trying to mess with him, and what there is to learn when he's got nothing to teach. Minju responds nonchalantly. She tells him she'll have to ask the cleaner again, until he accepts. Soo-young Lee sees Minju is not going to let up, so he gives up. He sighs and says, "Whatever, you figure it out." He then tells her that there is a large-scale conquest scheduled in a couple of weeks, so she needs to return by then. Minju bows her head and thanks him. Soo-young Lee shoos her away and tells her to get going because she is giving him a headache. After Minju leaves his room, Soo-young Lee begins talking to himself. What is the world coming to? What could a hunter possibly learn from a cleaner? He wonders what the other teams will think of this. If the head of Team 2 hears about this, about the cleaning team, and then he stops thinking about it because it's too terrifying to even imagine. He begins dialing a number on the phone. Someone on the other line answers the phone. That person is an assistant. He tells her it's him, Soo-young Lee of Operation Team 1, and he asks if the general manager is available. The assistant replies yes sir and asks him what his inquiry is. He tells her to let him speak to him and that he has something to tell him. Several days later, the cleaning team is working inside a dungeon, and Junwoo appears to be in a good mood. Apparently, he has been humming songs while cleaning dungeons for quite some time. Sang-hyuk points his finger at his head and twirls it, to signal to Soo-young that Junwoo has finally lost it. Several days ago, Junwoo unlocked a new skill, one counter. Apparently, he met the requirement, interest from the association on the dungeon cleaning team. Junwoo has no idea why it unlocked because he doesn't think he has done anything special. He thinks of the adage, the end justifies the means, so hey, he'll take it. Guntae interrupts Junwoo to ask him about something. Junwoo asks him what the matter is. Guntae tells him he doesn't want to impose or question his personal life, and he points his finger and asks him what she is doing here. Junwoo tells him that he brought her along. Guntae remarks, "Yeah, you don't say, because it sure as hell wasn't me." Junwoo tells him that they don't know when Heejang will be back, so he thought it would be nice to have an extra pair of hands. Guntae tells Junwoo, "Yes, that may be true, but she's a hunter." He is worried about the association hearing about her doing the dirty work with them. Guntae asks Junwoo if he is listening. Junwoo wasn't too thrilled about bringing Minju along either. However, a few days ago, Minju gets down on her knees and begs Junwoo to teach her the ways of swordsmanship, and she calls him Master. Junwoo is stunned. He wonders if she has gone nuts. He is thinking, what kind of hunter asks a cleaner to teach swordsmanship? This is bound to be a pain in the ass. He wonders how he can get her to change her mind, and then he thinks of an idea. Junwoo smirks and tells Minju that he will think about it if she helps with the cleaning duty. He is thinking that, this way, her pride as an actual hunter won't allow her to accept the deal. However, without hesitation, Minju jumps with excitement and says to him, "Will just the cleaning do?" Junwoo's jaw drops. This isn't how it's supposed to go. Junwoo is perplexed by Minju's determination when he realizes that he had underestimated her. Junwoo scratches his head as he watches Minju toil away down on the dungeon floor, while Guntae feels pity for her. He thought that she was full of ego. He didn't expect her to take on such tasks willingly. He wonders, damn, how did I get myself involved in this? Meanwhile, Soyeon notices the way Junwoo is looking at Minju. She thinks Junwoo is feeling sorry for her. Junwoo sees Soyeon is giving him the look, and he immediately catches on to what she is probably thinking, and he becomes annoyed. He knew Soyeon wouldn't believe him. From her point of view, Soyeon sees a young woman with a broken heart, and a man who still has feelings for her. She wonders, what is this vibe between these two people? God damn it. Junwoo is really not happy with the situation he put himself in. He is thinking that he definitely underestimated Minju Kim. He truly didn't expect her to accept his deal. Suddenly, Minju shouts for his attention. She calls him master and tells him that this won't come off. Junwoo shouts at her, saying that he told her not to call him that. He goes over to her and sees what she's trying to clean. He tells her she can't just try to scrub it off by force. Minju asks Junwoo how she should then. Junwoo tells her to look, and he points to the blood stains on the ground. He points at one stain and says it is human blood, and the other is monster blood. When there's a mix of both, don't try to scrub them off together. He tells her that she needs to first wipe the human blood with a mop, and then use fire to melt the rest away. He asks her if she's got it. Minju affirms. He pulls out a knife and tells her that the sticky substance on the ground is monster flesh. He explains that it would take too much chemical cleaner to remove it, so she can just use a knife to scrape it off. He then tells her to make sure she remembers to gather the byproducts and set them all aside in one pile. He also tells her to remember to wipe the knife clean after each use, because the monster blood can corrode the blade. Minju tells him okay. Junwoo quickly perks up when he sees the expression on her face. She appears to be feeling overwhelmed. With enthusiasm he says to her, "What's with that face? You don't want to do it? It's really not the job for a hunter, is it? Yeah, just give up and leave." However, Minju was just processing her thoughts. She tells him no, and that it's just that there's a lot more to cleaning than she had thought. Junwoo is thinking, yep, she is definitely not in her right mind. Guntae approaches them, and he remarks, "Look at that." Junwoo is a professional cleaner now. Junwoo is blushing. He is feeling a little embarrassed by his boss's praise. He chuckles and says that it really isn't much. And then, Junwoo suddenly gets a reality check. Professional cleaner my ass. He wonders what he is doing, standing there feeling all proud. A former SSS ranked hunter, and now look at me, feeling proud of being a professional cleaner. Fuck. Junwoo falls into despair. Guntae turns to Minju, and he tells her that she is doing great for a first-timer. Minju questions him if she really is. Meanwhile, Soyeon is still questioning the nature of Junwoo and Minju's relationship. She thinks she sees two people who are madly in love. "My darling, Minju. You're making me blush, master." Soyeon really wants to know. Somewhere in the dungeon, Minju calls out to her master and informs him that she finished cleaning in her zone. She asks if there is anything else, and Soyeon quickly interjects and tells Minju that she should then go with her and move on to the next area, and she asks the boss if it is all right. Guntae questions her and says that there is going to be a lot of monster carcasses to clean up. He asks if the two of them will be okay to handle it by themselves. Soyeon asks him, when else would she get the chance to work with a hunter, and she turns to Minju, and asks if she is fine with that. Minju replies, yeah I guess. Soyeon exclaims that they are going then, and Sang-hyuk and Junwoo watch the two of them head out. After they leave, Sang-hyuk tells Junwoo that he is betting on the hunter, and he asks him about his pick. Junwoo replies, same. As Soyeon and Minju make their way inside the cathedral, Soyeon is feeling anxious and is trying to figure out what she should do. She is realizing that she didn't think this through. She was so determined to bring her along, but now she doesn't know what to say. She doesn't know what got into her, she just couldn't help it. Minju tells Soyeon that she looks exhausted, and she asks her if she is okay. Soyeon tells her that she's totally fine, nothing to worry about. Minju tells her she doesn't look like it, and Soyeon tries to laugh it off. She then tells Minju that she actually hasn't been getting much sleep lately. Minju asks if something happened. Soyeon tells her no, not exactly, but instead, she would like to hear her story. She tells her that it's just her first time actually talking to a hunter. Minju tells her there is not really much to talk about. She just followed her father's career path. Soyeon is wowed, and she asks her if they are working together. Minju tells her no, and he was fired, for a shoulder injury. Minju continues, it all started with her father's injury, and his superior told him to stop faking it, and to get on with work. His partners began distancing themselves from him. Her father didn't want to become a nuisance to his team, so he kept his injury to himself and held it in. In the end, his condition only deteriorated. Soyeon is in shock, she can't believe that they could treat their partner that way. Minju tells her no and that she has it wrong. She tells her that there is no such thing as partners in the association, there are just superiors and juniors. Because of his injury, her father lost all potential for progress. He remained a beer anchor until he was fired. Who cares about a perpetual beer anchor anyway? To them, he was disposable. Minju tells Soyeon that's what the association is really like, and that rank means everything there. They abuse their power and impose it on the weak, but they yield it to the strong. Minju says, if that is how they treat hunters, she can't imagine how they treat the cleaning. She doesn't finish and says never mind. Soyeon and Minju stop to look at the rose window in the cathedral. And then, Minju comes out and says it, you've got feelings for the master, don't you? Soyeon's face turns bright red with embarrassment. She asks Minju if she can tell. Minju grins, and she tells her that it is kind of obvious. Soyeon becomes flustered as she tries to explain herself, and then, she begins to talk about Junwoo. She says that he is good at what he does, and that he is responsible. She mentions that Junwoo actually slacked off on his first day, and he showed up late on his second day. So, she didn't think she'd be seeing him for very long. And now, Junwoo works harder than anyone else on the team. In addition, he's so knowledgeable about dungeons and monsters, and the information he shares is in a league of its own. It outweighs anything provided by the control team, not to mention the stuff that doesn't even exist on file. Minju replies, I see. Minju is now thinking about Junwoo. That man is definitely not just any ordinary cleaner. She thinks about how he was able to determine her condition just from observing some knife wounds on a subdued monster carcass. And if he's more knowledgeable about the dungeons and the monsters than the control team, then he is the one true master she needs. Manhwa tells Soyeon that she doesn't need to worry because she doesn't have any feelings for Junwoo. Soyeon asks her if that is true, and asks why she has been coming to see him every day then. Manhwa begins to explain, and she brings up what she said to her earlier, that the association looks down on the weak, and only favors those who are strong, and that pisses her off. She is bothered by the culture so much, to the point where she had decided that a change was needed. That is why she needs to become stronger. However, in order for her to achieve that, she needs the master's help. Soyeon asks Manhwa, "So you're saying you're not his ex, after all?" Manhwa replies, "What?" Sang-hyuk announces that Soyeon and Manhwa are back. While the two women are sharing stories and laughing about their experience with sexual harassment, Junwoo is wondering when they became so tight. Guntae calls the team to attention. He reminds them that the boss monster is venomous, and he tells them to make sure they use extra caution. He also says to them that they don't need to worry too much, as long as they don't come into direct contact with it. Everyone answers him, except for Soyeon, and Guntae notices. He calls on her, and Soyeon doesn't know why. Guntae asks her what the matter is, and he tells her that she seems to be out of it today. Soyeon explains that the suit just feels a little uncomfortable today, and that she also can't breathe well with the respirator. She then says she'll be fine and that it's not a big issue. Sang-hyuk asks the boss, since it was brought up, if it's not about time that they get new equipment, and he asks him if he has spoken to the association about increasing the team's budget. He then says, "Better safe than sorry, no?" And he points at one of their items and remarks, "Look at this old-ass canteen." Guntae asks him if he thinks that he hasn't already tried, and he tells him that the association told him that they don't have the funds. Sang-hyuk remarks, "A shit ton of work for us, and yet somehow unable to pay us decently." Guntae suggests that they now cut the complaints and get to work, and also, treat the equipment with care. He turns around and opens the doors to the boss's room. Upon entering, the team sees goblin carcasses scattered around the room, and a large slime monster lying in the center. Guntae reminds everyone again to make sure that they don't touch the boss monster. Junwoo is familiar with this one. It is a maximum slime. Although it looks like an ordinary slime, its poison and its stench are deadly. Exposure will eventually lead to intoxication. Once a person becomes intoxicated, it is impossible for that person to survive, because they only have about 5 minutes to get out of the dungeon and get treatment at a hospital. Sometime later, the team is still cleaning in the boss's room, and Guntae checks up on everyone's progress. He asks Sang-hyuk and Junwoo if they are good, and they both answer yes. Guntae then asks Manhwa, and she answers yes. "And, Soyeon, how about you?" She doesn't respond. Guntae says her name again, and he nudges her shoulder. And Soyeon falls on the ground. Everyone is alarmed, and they all call out to her. Guntae holds her, and he asks her what is wrong, and he tells her to get up. Soyeon is shaking, and she has just turned pale. Sang-hyuk exclaims that there must have been something wrong with her respirator, and they see that her protective suit has been torn. Guntae panics and says that they must get her out of here, and he tells someone to contact the support team. Junwoo is thinking about how he should have done a better job at warning them about the dangers of this dungeon. He wonders if this is what it has come to. Sang-hyuk shouts at Junwoo and tells him to help him carry her out now. Junwoo doesn't respond to him. He is lost in thought. He is sorry to say that it is too late now. It is impossible for the support team to arrive and inject her with the antidote within the given time she has left. The maximum slime's toxin will only result in agonizing pain and ultimately. Sang-hyuk shouts at Junwoo again, and he tells him to hurry and get help. Guntae continues to try talking to Soyeon. He tells her to hang in there and says that the support team should be here anytime now. Junho calls out to Minju, and she answers him. He tells her to take out her sword. Minju asks him about his plan. She asks him if he is going to have her do, and then Guntae and Sang-hyuk interrupts their conversation. They are now very frustrated with Junho. Guntae asks him what is wrong with him. Sang-hyuk swears to Junho that he is dead to him if anything happens to Soyeon. However, Junho continues to ignore them. He turns to Minju, and he says to her that there is no time to spare, and he tells her again to take out her sword. Junho tells Minju that it's not a big deal, and that all they need is just a slit. Minju questions her master. She tells him that she can't slit her, not Soyeon. She tells him that there must be another way. Junho cuts her off and says that it's not Soyeon, it is him. Everyone looks at Junho with confusion. Guntae shouts at Junho and begs for his attention, and he tells him that Soyeon is in critical condition. Junho turns away and tells everyone to just wait and see, and he tells Minju to hurry. Minju is feeling unsure about the situation, but she sighs and says all right. She tells Junho that she doesn't know what he is thinking, and she stretches out her hand and summons her sword. Junho suddenly panics when he sees what Minju is about to do. He tells her to wait and tells her that he never asked for her to use a skill, but it is too late. Minju activates sword dance and slashes his chest. Junho is annoyed that she didn't just stop and listen to him. As his blood drips onto the ground, Junho is notified that an attack on him has been detected, and he is notified that he is entering combat mode. Guntae and Sang-hyuk are horrified by what just happened. Junho grunts in pain, thinking that it hurts like hell. He then tells everyone that he is going to take Soyeon to the support team and that he will meet them there. Guntae is confused, and he questions Junho about what he just said. He shouts at him, asking what the hell he is talking about. Take her where, looking like that, and he says that it is at least a 30-minute ride to get to the support team. And then suddenly, Junho disappears along with Soyeon right before their eyes, and they see the boss's room doors blast wide open. Junho is carrying Soyeon on his back, and he is moving at lightning speed. His hyper boost skill had been activated. Junho is thinking he needs to hurry because Soyeon only has 3 minutes left. Later that evening, at the Minggug Hospital and Medical Center, Guntae is shouting with gratitude. Guntae and the others are meeting with the attending physician. The doctor tells them that it was a close call, and that if Soyeon hadn't made it there in time, then the results would have been very different. The doctor informs them that the patient should recover in several days' time. Guntae repeatedly bows his head and thanks the doctor. The doctor turns his attention to the man who brought Soyeon to the hospital. Junho tells him that he is Junho Kim. The doctor tells him to make sure he stops by at the main desk and pays for his suture treatment. Junho grumbles at him, fine. He can't believe that they are charging him for just a couple of stitches. Shortly, the team leaves to go see Soyeon. Soyeon is feeling a little embarrassed about her situation, and she tries to laugh it off. Her teammates don't find it funny. Guntae begins yelling at her. He tells her that she had them all worried to death, and that she should have told them that she wasn't feeling well, and he calls her a fool. Soyeon apologizes. Sang-hyuk begins yelling that this is fucking ridiculous, and that this is all because of the goddamn worn-out gear. Guntae cuts him off and tells him that he needs to watch his language in public. Sang-hyuk dismisses his boss and says that this is bullshit, and he asks how they expect them to work in protective suits that do everything but protect them. He goes on to say that he heard the hunters receive seasonal upgrades on their gear, but look at them. Guntae tries to calm him down, but Sang-hyuk shouts back at him. He tells him to correct him if he is wrong. Minju is feeling a little awkward and doesn't know what to say to Sang-hyuk's remark about hunters. Sang-hyuk backtracks a little and says that he doesn't mean to say that the hunters are at fault, but Minju tells him that it's fine. Guntae turns his attention to Soyeon, and he tells her to get some rest while she can, and that he will see if he can get the hospital bills covered by the association by treating the incident as an occupational hazard. Soyeon asks him if he thinks they will approve the claim. Guntae tells her, of course, that this is a work-related injury, so he has no doubt, and he tells her not to worry. Meanwhile, Sang-hyuk is feeling a little ashamed about talking trash about hunters in front of Minju. Junwoo turns around and begins to leave, and they ask him where he is going. Junwoo tells them that he is going for a walk. Junwoo is thinking about how Soyeon was injured on the job, due to outdated equipment. He says that things are working out better than he expected. He thinks about the requirement to unlock his Hellfire skill, a budget expansion for the cleaning team, and he believes this is the perfect time for him to bring it up. In light of this incident, the association will have no choice but to play along if they want to avoid hurting its public image. Junwoo is grinning with excitement. If he can work this out, he'll have 2 skills unlocked, and he will be bidding the cleaning team farewell in no time. Meanwhile, the team is talking about Junwoo. Soyeon says that Junwoo didn't seem to be in a good mood, and she asks if something had happened to him. Guntae bets that Junwoo was furious. Soyeon now feels ashamed, and she asks if it's because she caused too much trouble. Guntae shakes his head no, and tells her that it's because she got injured. And then with a smile, he says that it may seem like Junwoo has a temper, but he is a loyal young man who cares more about his partners than anyone else, and that he knows one when he sees it. Minju suddenly becomes interested in what Guntae just said. She then thinks about how Junwoo put his partner first, and that he values them enough to sacrifice his own body. Minju knew he was a natural leader. Sang-hyuk brings up Junwoo and asks if anyone finds him fishy. Soyeon questions him, and she asks if something happened. Sang-hyuk sees that Soyeon isn't aware of what happened, and he tells her that Junwoo saved her life, and he did it by using a skill. Soyeon is surprised and she asks who, questioning if it was really Junwoo. Sang-hyuk tells her yes, it was Junwoo, and he says that he hasn't been doing this job that long, but to see a cleaner using skills is absurd. Soyeon is just finding out that Junwoo saved her life, and she feels guilty that she didn't even get to thank him. Guntae turns to Minju and asks her what she thinks of Junwoo. Soyeon is still thinking about Junwoo and is wondering if he could have been upset because she didn't thank him. Minju puts her hand on her chin and begins thinking about Junwoo. She says that Junwoo seems like a good person, but he is not exactly her type, although he's got quite the personality. Guntae and Sang-hyuk look at Minju with a blank expression. Guntae clarifies himself and tells her what he meant to ask was, what she thinks of Junwoo as a hunter. Minju is feeling a little embarrassed. Guntae admits Junwoo is too skilled to be working as a dungeon cleaner, and he says Junwoo is more knowledgeable about dungeon tactics and monsters than most other hunters out there. Minju asks Guntae if he is asking her whether Junwoo could be transferred to the strategy and operation team. Guntae tells her that he knows it's a tall order, but it may be for the best for Junwoo. Minju says Junwoo is definitely outstanding, and he is a cut above most hunters in terms of experience and skill, but the problem is that he is on the cleaning team. Sang-hyuk and Guntae are a little taken aback. Sang-hyuk asks her if she doesn't think what she said is a little too harsh, and he asks her if she's saying that cleaners don't even deserve a chance. Minju tells him that that's not it, in fact, it's the other way around. They are both confused. She tells them that, even as a B-rank hunter, she can't gauge how skilled her master actually is. She goes on to say that Junwoo must be well aware of his own strength, and yet, he chose to work on the cleaning team over the strategy and operation team. She then poses the question, what do you think that means? Guntae answers with a guess, that he's staying on the team, because he wants to. Minju tells him yes and says that it's the only reason she can wrap her head around. Guntae asks why Junwoo would insist on doing such dirty work. Minju tells them that this is only an assumption. The master is incredibly skilled, and he doesn't want to be caught up in the corporate ladder, and he has chosen to work with the cleaning team for the sake of camaraderie. Guntae, Sang-hyuk, and Soyeon are struck with all sorts of emotions. Guntae exclaims, "Oh goodness, if that's the case, I won't speak of this matter anymore." Sang-hyuk exclaims, "That fool, I didn't know he cared that much about us, I knew he was a loyal one." And then, Sang-hyuk tells the group that something just occurred to him. He asks, if Junwoo cares that much about his partners, is there a chance that he could have left to go to the association, and take Soyeon's matter into his own hands? Minju is thinking no, that there is no way, but then again, Junwoo is the type to go above and beyond. The man asks the young man who he might be. Junwoo answers, a cleaner, sir. The man asks Junwoo if he is requesting a budget increase for the cleaning team. Junwoo replies, yes sir. The man takes his time to respond. He is gathering his thoughts on the situation presented to him. This man is the general manager, and he is the head of Korea Association of Supernatural Ability Management at the Seoul headquarters. His name is Min Chul-soo, and he secured this post around this time last year. Not long after, one by one, his followers landed high-ranking positions in the organization. Min Chul and his henchmen began to influence almost every aspect of the association. Their influence on the organization has reached far beyond what anyone could have ever imagined. Min Chul tells Junwoo, that's the management team's business, not his. Junwoo asks him about what kind of hunter deals with smaller monsters on a conquest, when the hunter can just subjugate the boss and finish the conquest once and for all. Min Chul asks Junwoo if he's a hunter. Junwoo tells him no, he is a cleaner. Min Chul then asks Junwoo what he is gathering is, a cleaner came directly to the general manager to ask for a budget increase, and the cleaner is not even the team leader, but a mere staff member. Junwoo tells him he is exactly right. Min Chul tells him that he guesses kids his age wouldn't know any better. He then asks him what exactly the cleaning team needs a budget increase for, because they don't have that many expenses anyway. Junwoo tells him that is exactly why. The reason they have so few expenses is because that is all they can afford with their current budget. Min Chul is roused by Junwoo's response, because what he said is not false. He tries to downplay it, and he laughs at him and says, what an amusing kid. He then tells him about how they say ignorance brings courage. Junwoo cuts him off, and he says there's been an accident. Junwoo tells him that they didn't have any budget for replacing outdated equipment, so they continued to use what they had. Consequently, a team member was exposed to monster toxin, because her protective suit ruptured, and her respirator malfunctioned during the job. Min Chul is surprised to hear about this, and he asks Junwoo why he never received a report on the incident. Junwoo tells him that he probably didn't, because it has only just happened. He then tells him that he honestly understands that he doesn't want to spend money on the cleaning team, but accidents shouldn't occur. Min Chul tells Junwoo that he is sorry to hear that, however, they don't have the funds. Junwoo questions him if that is really true, that they don't have the funds. Min Chul tells him yes, and he asks him what he would know about the association, and he tells him that he seems like a newbie anyway. Junwoo grins and says, I don't think so. He tells him that he pulled strings on this year's budget, and that the budget assigned to the Superpower Management Department alone probably amounts to millions, and if he is correct, 70% of the funds were allocated to the strategy and operation team. Min Chul is in shock. He asks Junwoo how he knows about all of this. Junwoo doesn't answer his question, and he tells him that they can't use it all anyway, and that they're just going to spend whatever is left on celebratory conquests and union raids at the end of the year. So, what he is saying is, spare some funds for those who really need them. Min Chul is flabbergasted. He asks Junwoo who he is. Junwoo says to him, I told you, I'm a cleaner. He then tells him that he should also consider what could be at stake, and guesses that it's been 3 months since he assumed office. Min Chul tells him that it's 2 actually. Junwoo says, right, 2, and tells him that he better secure that seat that he worked really hard to get. He mentions that the cleaning team is already known for how they are treated, and he then poses the question, what if people found out that there had been an accident because the team didn't have the budget to buy new equipment? Min Chul asks Junwoo if he is blackmailing him right now. Junwoo acts coy, and tells him of course not, he is just saying. Min Chul tells him that he gets it. He asks Junwoo how much he is thinking of. With a grin, Junwoo replies, up to you sir. Junwoo is thinking about the requirement for unlocking his Hellfire skill. It simply states, budget expansion, so the amount doesn't matter, as long as it's an increase. He tells him that it seems like the conversation is over, so he'll get going, but Minchul cuts him off and tells him to wait. He asks him if he happens to know Hunter Minju Kim, and Junwoo asks him why he is asking. Minchul takes his response as an affirmation. He perks up, and he tells Junwoo that he will let him know after he reviews the budget expansion request, and that he may now leave. Junwoo is curious, why would Minchul bring her up now? After he leaves, Minchul begins dialing a number on the phone, while questioning what Junwoo told him, a cleaner, bullshit. Soo-young Lee answers the phone. Minchul tells him that a cleaner had just stopped by to speak to him, and that he has a feeling that he's the one he mentioned to him, the one whom Minju Kim is trying to learn swordsmanship from. Soo-young Lee asks him if a cleaner really came to see him, he himself. Minchul tells him that he is definitely not a cleaner. Soo-young Lee is confused, he asks who he is then. Minchul tells him he has no idea, but he knows that he is no ordinary cleaner for sure, because he had information about them, which could mean he's an insider from the association. He continues to tell him about how Junwoo just came to him to propose a budget increase for the cleaning team, however, he doesn't think that's what he's really after. Soo-young Lee asks him if he is certain that Junwoo is not from the cleaning team. Minchul tells him yes and asks why he is asking. Soo-young Lee tells him that it's good news, because he was about to teach them a lesson or two anyway. Minchul asks what he means. Soo-young Lee tells him that they've got to show them who's boss. The next day, Guntae is shocked to receive a letter, and he exclaims, "What is this nonsense?" He questions what he is seeing, a disciplinary action? Sang-hyuk asks what the hell this is, not compensation, but disciplinary action? He asks Minju how this makes sense, and says it isn't right. Minju tells him that she is just as astounded. Guntae reads the reason for disciplinary action against Soyeon Moon. It states that the accident occurred because she violated the policy against working side jobs, and the side jobs caused her to suffer from an accumulation of fatigue. Sang-hyuk remarks that they don't even get paid enough for the work they do. Guntae goes on to read the decision: dismissal of claim as an occupational accident, along with compensation. The accident occurred due to personal negligence, and there is no evidence that the equipment was outdated. In addition, the proposal for the cleaning team's budget expansion will also be rejected. Junwoo is very irritated, fucking hell. Minchul Soo, this is how you're gonna be? Soyeon tells him to not worry about it, because she really is fine. Junwoo is confused. Soyeon tells him that it's just a written warning, and that she never expected the claim to be approved anyway. After all, this is how the cleaning team has always been treated. Junwoo is wondering what she is going on about. It's the unlocked skills that he's worried about. Sang-hyuk tells Junwoo that he is a good man. Junwoo asks him what he is talking about. And then, they explain. Sang-hyuk tells Junwoo that he heard he took one for the team, and spoke to the general manager. He then tells him that he knew he was a crazy one, but now, he is a real badass. Guntae tells Junwoo that they heard, and that it's unfortunate, but his efforts won't go unnoticed. Minju is feeling empathy for Junwoo, and she says, "Master." Junwoo's eyes are spinning in circles. He wonders if they have all gone nuts, and how they could interpret his actions in that way. Junwoo doesn't know that after he left the hospital yesterday, they all talked about him and concluded that he cares deeply for his team. The team begins getting ready to head out to the dungeon. Guntae tells everyone to not let Junwoo's efforts go in vain, and he tells Soyeon to take it easy. Sang-hyuk says he needs to quit this job soon. Junwoo is pondering on what went wrong. The more he thinks about it, the less it makes sense to him. He didn't even ask for a large sum, nor did he threaten to press charges on them. So, why would they cite the side job as the reason in the notice? He thinks side job is a bit of a stretch. He wonders if there is some other reason for their decision, why they would go to such lengths to use a far-fetched reason. Meanwhile, Minju has also been thinking about the outcome of the decision, and she comes to question if it's because of her. Juno asks her what she is talking about. She tells him that she had mentioned the cleaning team to her boss when she requested time off. She knew that her boss wasn't too thrilled about it, but she is now starting to think that he could be retaliating. Juno asks what her boss's name is. She tells him it's Suyan Lee of Strategy and Operation Team 1. Juno knows exactly who that person is. Suyan Lee is one of Minchul's henchmen, and he became a team leader despite his lack of qualifications, and he is well known for his power trips. Juno laughs. He calls out to the boss. Guntae asks him what the matter is. Juno tells him he is taking the day off. Guntae exclaims, "What? Without prior notice?" Sometime later, at the Samsung station in the Socho district in Seoul, a man is asking his wife about what she wants to eat today. She tells him whatever is fine. He laughs at her and tells her that she is always fine with whatever. And then, suddenly, two tall pillars appear right in front of them. A portal begins to appear. People begin to panic when they see that it's a dungeon. They all run, except for one person. He is thinking, "It's about damn time to show off my skills." A monster screeches as it draws its last breath. As more monsters gather around him, Juno activates Hyper Boost, a skill that significantly increases his speed during combat. With his pickaxe, Juno quickly deals with them in a matter of seconds. He then takes a moment to reflect on what he is doing. Dungeon interception, secretly subjugating a dungeon without the association's permission and before their hunters arrive, is considered unethical. It is practiced by freelance hunters who are chasing after money. Juno is thinking about how it's been so long since he last battled. It's as if he has forgotten his own strength. He can't seem to adjust himself to it. He knows that what he is doing is risky. The reason why dungeon interception isn't very common is because hunters would need to finish up quickly, without any information on the dungeon. However, none of that matters to Juno, and he proceeds into the next room. He estimates it will be about 15 minutes when the strategy and operation team arrives, so he needs to try and get it done in 10. As a top-class hunter from his previous life, he could easily finish this dungeon within 10 minutes, but that was when he had all the necessary skills. Juno is now about to face a giant monster. He knows that this time is going to be a challenge, because without any of his defense skills, a single blow could send him to hell. As he approaches the monster, he remarks that it's the fourth boss. He thinks that, regardless, the only reason why he is able to subjugate this dungeon as fast as he is now, is because this isn't his first rodeo in this dungeon. Juno jumps on the monster and begins running up to the top. The monster reaches down to grab him. Juno quickly grabs his shovel and throws it at the monster's hand to stop it. He then activates one counter, a skill that increases damage by 3000% on weak spots. He strikes the monster dead center on the face with his pickaxe, and then the monster explodes. The metallic boar, the junior succubus, the ghost, and the dimensional ants dungeon. Juno counts 4 dungeons that he subjugated in one day. He thinks that this achievement is not bad, considering that a single hunter from the strategy and operation team would take a week to accomplish the same. He is a little bummed about the amount of money he'll get, because they are all low-level dungeons. He then thinks about the previous dungeon he subjugated. As he was leaving that dungeon, so many cars from the association showed up, that they covered the entire vicinity. He guesses that he had put the headquarters on notice. The association hunters who arrived there were not happy that they were put on duty on their day off. They couldn't wait to get a hold of that freelance hunter. Juno is thinking about if he were to get caught, the least that could happen to him is getting fired, and the worst is paying for damages. They probably won't even guess the culprit is a cleaner. Juno is expecting the hunters to arrive any moment. He gets up and thinks he should get going now, because he doesn't want to miss the look on their faces. However, they weren't the only ones to show that look. Junu's jaw drops to the ground when he arrives and sees Soo-Young Lee at the job site. Guntae asks him what brings him here. Soo-Young Lee replies, "Just a field trip." Junu is wondering what on earth brought him here. Did he catch on by any chance? Soo-Young Lee says that they need to foster some camaraderie with the other teams, and he asks them if they don't agree. Junu is thinking that is bullshit, he couldn't care less about the cleaning team. Soo-Young Lee tells them to treat him as a bystander. They can just pretend he isn't there, and carry on and do what they normally do. Junu is really concerned. For the chief of the strategy and operation team to suddenly show up? He definitely suspects him as the culprit of the dungeon interception. Guntae suggests that they should get working then, but he wonders what is with the tension here. He tells Soo-Young Lee that he'll get him a respirator and a hazmat suit. Soo-Young Lee tells him that he'll just be watching from afar, so he won't need the hazmat suit. Sometime later, the team is inside the dungeon, and they have been working non-stop. Guntae becomes concerned when he sees all the monster carcasses that they still have to clean up. He asks Sang-hyuk how much time is left. Sang-hyuk tells him an hour, and he says that they can make it if they pick up the pace. Junu asks Minju if she has any chemical cleaner left. She tells him yes, and she asks him what consistency he needs. Junu tells her 60%, he needs the solution to be strong because the monster flesh he is trying to clean up has completely hardened. He also tells her to bring him another mop while she's at it. Soo-Young Lee is looking at Minju and is wondering why she is still here. He continues to watch quietly while the cleaning team works. Guntae asks Soyeon for an update on the gas levels. She tells him it is 150 micrograms per square meter, and she says that the monster carcasses are decomposing pretty fast. Junu calls out to Sang-hyuk, and he tells him to help him with the dismantling when he is done. Sang-hyuk tells him that he can't now, because there is too much blood along the passage, and he would need to wipe it down again. Soo-Young Lee has been observing Junu, and he isn't buying his act. He thinks Junu is pretending to be busy just because he's around. He thinks that now seems like a good time to throw the bait. He calls out to Minju and tells her, "By the way," and Minju answers him. He asks her if she heard about the dungeon interception incidents that happened in the last 2 days. Junu's heart skips a beat. Junu is worried about what Minju might think or say, because she already believes he is a hunter. And, if it is known that a dungeon interception occurred while he was away, then someone may put the 2 and 2 together, and rat him out. The subject has piqued everyone's interest, and everyone turns their attention to Soo-Young Lee, except for Junu. Sweat is trickling down his face. He wonders if Soo-Young Lee is trying to feel him out. He is struck with anxiety when he realizes that shit's going down. Minju asks Soo-Young Lee if that is so, and she remarks that the hunters must be going wild. Soo-Young Lee tells her that they're performing a heavy sweep during the investigation, but they have yet to find the culprit. Junu continues to stay and work quietly, in his little corner, while sweating profusely. Soo-Young Lee tells them that the general manager is really pissed. He then mentions that he heard he is offering a significant reward to anyone who brings in the dungeon interceptor. Minju questions him about the reward. Soo-Young Lee tells her yes, and says that the general manager is offering additional points to hunters for their ranking evaluation, and he is offering a potential departmental transfer to any other team that catches the culprit. Soo-Young Lee has now captured everyone's attention. He reiterates that this applies to everyone, not just Minju, so they just need to make sure they report to him if they find anyone who is suspicious. And he gives them an example, someone who recently took 2 days off of work. Junu is thinking that it's over. He thinks about how Soo-Young Lee just easily enticed the team by mentioning departmental transfer as a reward. Soo-Young Lee may have pulled strings to land his position, but he overlooked his cunningness. Guntae approaches Junu and calls out to him. He then asks him about his injury from yesterday. Junu is completely caught off guard. Guntae then lectures him about how he told him to be careful when dismantling monsters. Soyeon joins in and tells Junwoo that he is lucky that he was injured yesterday, and not today, the one day Mr. Lee honors them with a visit. The cleaning team would have been painted in shame. Sang-hyuk calls Junwoo a fool and tells him that he knew he had it coming when he was humming songs while working. Junwoo is completely overwhelmed with confusion. He does not understand where all this nonsense is coming from, and his team is laying it on pretty thick. Guntae tells him that he's had it too easy because of all the compliments they gave him, and he asks him if he's gotten too cocky. Guntae then turns to Soo-young Lee and tells him that it's a shame that his team can't be of any help to him because there is no one here that they find suspicious. Soo-young Lee stutters, "No, that can't be," and Guntae cuts him off and goes on to say that it is so very unfortunate for them. If the culprit were on their team, then they would jump at the opportunity to move up and rat him out without a second thought. Sang-hyuk tells him that it is a shame, but if they do find anyone fishy, they will bring that person straight to him. He then tells him that he is a man of his word and that his loyalty knows no bounds. Guntae and Sang-hyuk begin laughing deviously. Soo-young Lee is taken aback by their behavior. He is wondering if they have all gone nuts because of all the cleaning. Meanwhile, Junwoo is looking away, still pretending to not know about anything. Minju is looking at Junwoo. She is feeling happy for him. Later that day, Soo-young Lee has returned to his office. He exclaims, "Sir, I found him." He is on the phone with Minchul, the general manager. Soo-young Lee tells him that he is absolutely certain that Cleaner is behind the dungeon interception, and he points out that there hasn't been any more incidents since he returned to work. Minchul interrupts him. He tells him that they should just throw in the towel and give in to the cleaning team. Soo-young Lee is in shock. He tells him that they have clear evidence, and all they need to do is proceed with the disciplinary action, and serve it to that bastard on a silver platter. He asks him if he plans on letting the cleaner off the hook. Minchul remains calm, and he tells Soo-young Lee that he thinks they just stirred up a hornet's nest. That cleaner isn't just an ordinary cleaner. He thinks his true identity is. Junwoo is at the bank to deposit the money he made from his recent dungeon exploits. A little boy notices him and tells his mother to look, because that guy is bleeding. His mother quickly hushes him and tells him that scary guy might hear him. Junwoo is smirking. He is thinking about how he is clever. The reason why he intercepted the dungeons is because, if he can't get the budget, then he'll just have to make one. Meanwhile, the conversation about Junwoo continues. Minchul tells him that someone just made an anonymous donation to the cleaning team. He says it is not a big amount, but it's about the same as what they've estimated the profits to be from the recently intercepted dungeons. Soo-young Lee tells him that's good, because it corroborates their assumptions, and he says it's clear who the culprit is. Minchul tells him that's exactly the problem. He then says, "A cleaner that intercepts dungeons," and he asks him if that seems a little off to him. Soo-young Lee doesn't understand, and he asks him what he means. Minchul poses a question to him. "Would you stay on the cleaning team with those skills?" And then, it just clicks. Soo-young Lee tells him that he would never, and he says, "Who would? Who would willingly take on the dirty work when you have the abilities to move up?" He tells him that it does make sense, but he is still not sure. Minchul tells him it's not just that. Not only did Junwoo come to him directly to propose a budget raise, but he also knew every detail about the association. Minchul tells him that he is certain Junwoo is not from the cleaning team. Soo-young Lee asks who Junwoo could possibly be. Minchul tells him that Junwoo is an insider from the association, and that is for sure, except he is from somewhere high up on the ladder. And he means the chairman himself. Soo-young Lee is flabbergasted, because he knows damn well how the chairman doesn't approve of him. He becomes very frustrated when he realizes how that explains everything. His team members were covering his ass, because they already knew he was backed by the chairman. He is angry at himself for not even thinking of that possibility. Minchul tells him that the chairman may have sent Juno as a warning for them to get their act together and straighten up before he takes matters into his own hands. He also tells him that, without him, there is no one to cover for him. Soo-young Lee tells Minchul that he's thinking that they have messed with the wrong person. Guntae commends the team for doing good work today. They just stepped outside their last dungeon for the day. Juna thinks Soo-young Lee may have decided to let him off the hook this time. The only issue now is when they are going to receive their funds. And then, he suddenly remarks, "What the hell," when he sees what lies ahead. Several tens of packages have been delivered to them. Sang-hyuk asks the boss if he ordered something, and Guntae tells him no. Sang-hyuk opens up a package, and is surprised by what he finds inside. He pulls it out and exclaims that they are new hazmat suits. Soyeon says that there are respirators too. Guntae tells them that there are also respirator parts and gloves packed in the boxes. He wonders if they were sponsored by the headquarters, and he asks the team what they think. Sang-hyuk tells him no way. Juno isn't fazed at all. He sees that the anonymous donation he made was eventually distributed. Guntae finds a letter, and he says it's the official notice, and he begins reading. Juno assumes the letter is going to state that their new equipment was funded by an anonymous donor. Although, it is a lot of equipment for 20 million won, about $16,000. Guntae begins to count out loud. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 zeros, and he exclaims, "A million." Juno snatches the letter out of his hand. He is flabbergasted when he sees 200 million. "Are you serious?" Sang-hyuk becomes curious when he sees Juno's reaction, and says he wants to take a look too. Juno doesn't understand, because that is 10 times the amount he donated. Sang-hyuk takes the letter from Juno, and reads it out to everyone. The letter states that the association re-reviewed the case, and determined that the primary cause of the accident was outdated equipment and the lack of budget to purchase replacements. Therefore, the Seoul headquarters has decided to increase the cleaning team's budget, albeit slightly. The letter also states that the association would like to give their deepest and most sincere sympathy to Ms. Soyeon Moon with regards to her injuries, and therefore, they would like to provide a small amount as compensation. Soyeon is in tears and in shock when she hears that she will be receiving 10 million won, about $7,500, as compensation for occupational injury. She begins crying and she turns to Juno to ask him if he did something. Juno tells her no, it wasn't him. Sang-hyuk asks Juno what he has done. Juno tells him that he said that it wasn't him. Guntae tells Juno that this is the first time he has ever seen a change like this in the association. Juno turns to Guntae and he asks him if he doesn't find it strange because it's unlike them to change their minds, and they're definitely not the type to be generous. Guntae brushes him off and tells him that it says so on the written notice, that they've readjusted their decisions. So, that's all they need to know, and with that said, there's nothing they know about who did what, and he asks him if he gets it. Everyone answers him, "Right, boss," except for Juno. The team then turns their attention to the boxes. Guntae grunts, and says that it's going to take forever to move all of them, and he wishes that they could have delivered them to the office instead. Juno is surprised to learn that they have an office. Guntae laughs and tells him of course they do, they just don't have much use for it. Minju asks Guntae where the office is located, and Guntae is confused. Minju then tells him that they should all head home, because she and the master can handle it. Juno asks her who said he was helping. Guntae tells Minju no, they will do it together. Minju insists that the two of them will be fine by themselves, and she asks Juno if she is right. Juno tells her that it's not like she'll take no for an answer. He wonders what Minju is up to. Sometime later, the system notifies Juno that the requirement to unlock his skill has been met. The requirement, a budget expansion for the cleaning team, has been met, and therefore, the Hellfire skill has been unlocked. The sun is setting, and Juno and Minju are on their way to drop off the last boxes. Juno is happy that another skill has finally unlocked. He is grinning, thinking that he'll be leaving this team in no time. Minja calls out to him and asks him if it was him. The interceptions that occurred in the past 2 days. Junho tells her so, and asks her what she is going to do about it. Minja tells him not to worry, and asks him if he really thinks she would rat him out just for some additional points. Junho asks her what her reason is to bring it up then. Minja tells him that he sponsored the compensation and funding with the profit from the interceptions, and she asks him if she is right. Junho asks her if she knew. Minja tells him that everyone else probably knew too, and that they're just turning a blind eye, because they don't want to put him at risk. Junho is taken aback by what she told him. He can't believe that everyone already knew about what he did, because he thought he handled everything meticulously. Minja asks him if he heard the saying, "You can't hide an all in a bag," and she tells him that it means his talents can't be concealed. She continues to tell him that the association may have let him go this time, but they'll keep an eye on him for sure. In that case, his place in the cleaning team won't be guaranteed any longer. Junho asks her if that is so. He is brimming with joy. He wonders if she is trying to help him move up the ladder by talking to the superiors. He never thought he'd get to see the day that Minja Kim would be of any help. He now thinks that bringing her along was indeed a good idea after all. It won't be long until he breaks free from this cleaning team nightmare. And then, Minja tells him that she knows that he wants to remain on the cleaning team, and she asks, "Don't you, Master?" Junho is at a loss for words. Minja then exclaims that she can help. She'll help so he can stay on the cleaning team for as long as he wishes. She then tells him that she knows she won't be of much help right now, but once she reaches a higher rank, she'll be able to help him stay on the cleaning team. Junho is now very agitated. Is this bastard trying to mess with me? Over the next few days, everything has been smooth sailing, until Junho asks what the hell happened here. There is graffiti all over the walls. Sang-hyuk sees a word and asks if he is reading it right. That's dumbass, isn't it? Upon entering the dungeon, the cleaning team found themselves in a complete disaster of a mess. All the walls were covered with profanity and smeared in monster blood. As they continued, they found monsters' carcasses scattered all over the place. Soyeon exclaims that this is going overboard. Sang-hyuk calls out to Junho and tells him to go with him, because they need to have a word with the impudent assholes. Junho asks Sang-hyuk what then, and says that there's nothing they can do if they don't admit to their actions. He tells him that they should just ignore it and let it go. Sang-hyuk shouts back at him. He questions him about what he just said, and he asks him if he is not infuriated by it. Junho dismisses his question, and tells him to ignore them because it will stop eventually. Sang-hyuk is fuming with exasperation. Junho is thinking that the only people who would do this are the hunters from the operation team. He agrees with Sang-hyuk, however, he wants to avoid confronting the operation team at all costs, if he wants his skills to unlock. Junho is thinking that they can't keep this going forever anyway. Or so he thought. It hasn't stopped, not even after 4 days. Soyeon asks what the point of all this is. Sang-hyuk tells the boss that this isn't right and that he is going to go sort it out with the operation team himself. Guntae tells them that he had already gone to them multiple times. He tried to meet with the team leader, but they told him that the team leader had gone on a business trip. He also says Junho was right, they weren't owning up to what they did. The hunters asked Guntae if he had any proof that it was them, and if they look like they have the time to do those things, because they're busy enough with their conquests as is. But then again, what would a cleaner know? Sang-hyuk takes out his phone, and says that they should then at least tell Hunter Minja Kim, and a scary voice tells Sang-hyuk to stop. Sang-hyuk is shocked, and asks Junho if he is going to tell him to ignore it, and let it go again. Junho tells him to not do it, because he is going there himself. As he leaves, he tells everyone not to clean this dungeon. Sang-hyuk remarks that Junho is at it again. Guntae tells him that it's still working hours. Juno thinks that the hunter's devotion to this immature behavior is truly impressive, that they gone at it for 4 days in a row. And what he gives them credit the most is their genuine ability to tremendously piss him off. Juno arrives across the street from the association, and he is still fuming with thoughts about them. Those pathetic good-for-nothing hunters dare to extend my working hours to 15 hours a day as if I'm not working my ass off already. Thanks to you shitheads, I've been missing my last ride home every night. Juno enters the building, and the woman at the front desk welcomes him to the sole headquarters of the association. She asks him how she can help. Juno shouts, "Out of my way!" and pushes the hunters aside. One of the hunters asks him how he dares to shove a hunter, and he shouts for him to stay right where he is. Juno ignores him. He is determined to end them all tonight, once and for all.